Happy Ukrainian Independence Day. And to celebrate, there's been some fireworks deep inside of Russia. Because right now, Russia's deep rear is burning. And on the front, it's not looking much better. Just look at what's happened today. The Ust-Luga port is on fire following a Ukrainian attack. This is all part of a larger campaign, a campaign to hit Moscow's wallet and its war machine, a strategy that is forcing Moscow to choose what it will do: chase down drones across its massive airspace within Russia, or thin out the air defense that's given to its front lines. The Kremlin is facing a very difficult decision, but time is ticking. And at this point, with a thinning wallet as well as thinning air defenses, time is running out for Russia. My name is Jason Smart, and I'm a special correspondent for the Kiev Post here in Kiev, Ukraine. So the fires at the Ust-Luga facility, they're obviously going to affect the Russian economy. Ukraine was not aiming here to have some sort of a random port fire. It was executing a precision strike on the Novatek terminal. Cash flows are affected by this. Logistics for the front are affected by this. Exports are stalled. So the Kremlin must move top defenses to guard its income. Or it can keep those defenses on the front. But it cannot have both. And as we've discussed now for a couple of weeks, this is Ukraine's plan, to stretch the Russians thin. And now, the stretching has become well past the comfort point. The Russian Ministry of Defense likes to always point out that it shot down a lot of the drones, which is true. But it usually leaves out the fact that plenty of drones are getting through the Russian air defense, and they are blowing up these oil refineries. But it's not just that. It's part of something bigger. It's part of a strategy to change the way that this war is fought. A war that works in Ukraine's interest, not Russia's. Because Ukraine is actively shaping the battlefield. It is making it impossible for the Russians to wage war as they anticipated. So look at the attacks, which are now quite regular, on the Russian railways. As we've discussed this before as well, the Russian railways are incredibly important. More than 70% of transport for the Russian military goes by rail. When these facilities are attacked, we see the immediate effect and the long-term effect. So the immediate effect, okay, trains have to be rerouted, and it's also going to make it more difficult to get supplies to soldiers. But in the long term, there's another effect, which is that Russia, due to the fact that it simply had never had plan Bs for a lot of its train infrastructure, is now being forced to investigate other options. What does it do if its facilities are attacked? And given the limited money that Russia has, that's a big problem. Because it can't necessarily just build new facilities. Building new railroad facilities is not very quick and not very cheap. But what else this means is this. These military trains, they're supposed to have the fuel, the ammunition, the food for the soldiers. They're all being delayed. And that is making the Russian troops on the front weaker. And this gives Ukraine an advantage. So let's take a look at what this means on the battlefield. Look what happened earlier today. While the rear back in Russia is burning, the Ukrainians are making gains on the front lines. The Marines of the 37th, with the 214th, retook Zleny High in Donetsk. This closes the road and thus eases the pressure downstream towards Pokrovsk. Ukraine holds the initiative, and it's using precision to attack the Russians. It's not allowing the Russians to rope them into something that they cannot handle. The Russians would love that. They are being strategic and smart. And now the Russians are having more and more problems. Their logistics routinely have problems. If you read Russian Telegram, you routinely hear the Russian troops complaining. They're making their videos to Vladimir Putin, asking him for assistance to do something about the fact that they're undersupplied. So Ukraine's attacks are immediately affecting how this war is being fought. And when you look at it in the bigger picture, you come to a realization. The Russian troops are becoming panicked. And in Moscow, they're quite concerned. But across Russia as a whole, there is a seeking sense that maybe things are about to get much worse. However, how often do you see this in the Western press? Which is why this channel exists, to tell the truth about what's happening here in Ukraine, and what's really happening in the neighboring country, Russia. What is really occurring? And unfortunately, many people believe the Russian propaganda and don't realize that in fact it is Ukraine that is winning. It is Ukraine that will win. So please help me get this message to more people. Help me to get this perspective to others. All I ask of you is this. Please like this video. Please subscribe to this channel. And consider becoming a channel member today. So Ukraine is on a roll. It's been attacking these facilities. It's been attacking things that Russia thought would never be attacked. And all of this is just simply raising costs. It's spreading fear. It's spreading thin the coverage. And this is something that the Kremlin doesn't know how to cope with. And it tries to. It has its methods. Just look in the past 24 hours. In St. Petersburg, they're throttling the mobile data. They're slowing down the internet. So much so that, in fact, shops there are not able to use their terminals for credit card transactions, which is creating monstrous lines throughout the city. St. Petersburg is not a village. It's the second biggest city in Russia. There's something else that's going on. The Russians say that this is because they have to prevent the drone strikes. But there's a reason to believe that perhaps it's really about making sure the public doesn't know what's going on. You see, that facility that was struck, it's not so far away from St. Petersburg. And so if you slow down the internet just enough, the people won't be able to read about it. Certainly, Russian national TV will not be mentioning that it got struck. Would that be possible? Would the Kremlin do something like that? Well, let's have this in mind. You've seen that they've already tried to ban Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, and others. And now they're seeking to ban Google Meets. Now, the excuse they gave in that specific case was because there's too much fraud using Google Meets. The fact is, very few people use Google Meets. But why would they have this accusation of fraud? Well, it's the same accusation they made as to why you can't take money out of your bank account. In order to combat fraud, they're preventing you from taking out your cash. That's interesting. Perhaps the reality is there's not enough cash in the banks, and this is to prevent bank runs. How about they really don't want you to have Google Meets or WhatsApp because they want to be able to monitor you, to surveil you. And if you have something that's outside of what they control, they cannot surveil it. And fraud is just a pretext. In fact, what did the Russians recently announce? Max. Max, the new app, is conveniently installed onto everyone's phone now. It is known to already copy all your photos, copy all your videos, copy all your text, as well as copy your keystrokes and securely transmit them to the Kremlin. However, now it's become very clear that it's not so secure. And in fact, all this data stolen from the millions of Russian citizens can become lost. It can leak. So when we hear the Kremlin tell narrative, it says something. It says something like this. We are interested in your security. We are interested in combating fraud. And hence, we will not allow you to take out your money. Hence, we will not allow you to have Google Meets or WhatsApp. We're not doing this because we want to censor you. We're not doing this to work against you. This is a free country. We're doing this to defend you. That sort of Orwellian doublespeak is something that the Russians are very fluent in. And other times they say things that seem just crazy. In fact, Russian TV now is saying that Estonia, a country with a population of 1.3 million people, is preparing to invade Russia. Population 140 million. Now, why would they really do this? Do they really think that the Estonians are going to invade Russia? That would seem pretty improbable. It's more likely they're doing this to, just as typical, claim a foreign threat, which then explains domestic failures. It is actually being done as part of a forewarning. It's preparing the audience for new crackdowns and fresh mobilizations that are coming. So always the Russians will have some sort of excuses. They'll say that this is something being done to help the public, or as a need to combat some sort of a foreign evil. But the reality is a little bit different. The reality is very simple. The Russian government has no idea what to do. It has no idea how to win on the front, and within Russia itself, how to control the situation. The situation within Russia is pretty grave. It's, in fact, very bad. Russia is dying out as a country. Look at its demography. New reports that came out today cite a drop of about 10 million people in Russia. That's a lot less people. And what's incredible about it is that it's not going to get better. Russia actually has some of the worst demographic data in the world. So bad that now they're proposing new laws, including just last week, the parliament is now suggesting that you can only have as many pets as you have children. So if you were to have one dog and one cat, that means you have a minimum of 2 children. If you have 2 dogs and 1 child, it means one of your dogs is about to go away because you can only have proportionate to the number of children you have or less. This is something they're doing to pressure children to have people to have more children because they simply have no other idea of what they can do. And incredibly enough, the top reason in polling in Russia that people say they don't have children is because of the bad economy. The fact that they think that the country itself is not stable. And rather than try to address that, rather than try to fix that, the Kremlin comes up with more insane laws to try to control their own population. Russia today, though, is losing on multiple fronts. It's losing on every front imaginable. It's not just the refineries and the rail or the tax on the power. It's the fact that the Russians themselves don't know what to do domestically or internationally. We see today that Vladimir Putin himself is becoming weakened. The war at this moment might, in fact, be preserving his power. It might give him the justification of why he has to do what he's doing, which is why many people who study Russia and study Putin argue that he might not want peace. Peace puts him at risk. No longer is it necessary to have a strong leader. And the elites at this point are starting to see a leader who, how can he justify losing Ukraine? How he justify to those elites, who any day could overthrow him, that in fact we won in Ukraine. These people realize that Vladimir Putin is dragging the state down. And undoubtedly, those in the inner circle, those in the elites, will always put their interests first. They will save themselves before they think twice about what happens to Putin. So these people, these elites, are all watching as the situation in Russia gets worse and worse. We see the power is flickering in different Russian cities. Energy sites are burning. We see that the rail system is collapsing. And the cities are themselves having more and more problems. And Ukraine's deep strikes are not making it any better for the Russians. Money is bleeding, time is shortening, and the options are narrowing for the Kremlin. So despite what you see on TV, don't ever forget, the reality is very simple. Ukraine is not fighting the type of war that Russia wants. Russia wants a war of attrition because it has a large population. But Ukraine is fighting smarter. It is keeping the Russians at bay, preventing the Russians from making significant advances, and at the same time, destroying Russia from the inside. Thank you for watching. Please like this video, send it to a friend, post it on social media, and subscribe to this channel. And be sure to leave your comments below. As always, thank you for supporting Ukraine.